story of Abraham and his Melchizedek as well. In this account, we are told the patriarch Abraham gave a tenth of the spoils. That's also in verse 4.
So talking about the gross income versus net income, this is something that's come up several times in our discussion. You know, should I tithe off the gross or the net income? Well, think about it from this perspective. When you receive your paycheck, you're going to pay your federal and your state taxes off of the gross. So you get your gross income, and they take off your federal and state taxes, your FICA, which is your federal income contribution, and then also your health and life and long-term care insurance. Those are usually going to be pre-tax and off of the gross. And if you're contributing to a 401k or a 403b, those are going to be pre-tax as well. Another thing would be considered gross income would be interest on your investments. Let's say you are investing in something and you're receiving interest payments. Your rental income that you have from any rental property that you own, small business ventures, interest earned on bank accounts and things of that nature. And also another one would be selling your business. If you have a business that you've recently sold, and after you've paid off all of your debts that you owe for that business, anything that you have remaining on that would be considered a gross income as well.
Some people always ask, why should I pay off the gross? I didn't get that on my check. A lot of times what we do get is we don't look at the things that we're taking out as being a part of a blessing or something that we're paying into. Health insurance, long-term contributions, or 401k, those are benefits that you have. Those are benefits you opted into to be a part of your, to be taken out of your gross income. So you're actually still funding something. So in essence, ideally, you're still paying off of the gross versus the net. And I hope that explains that a little bit for you as well. Again, that's just relating as to why we should be returning to God off of the gross versus the net, because you opted into health insurance. You didn't have to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can adjust withholdings and things of that nature on your taxes as well a little later in some other lessons as we progress along. The central storehouse. What is the central storehouse? We hear it in the Bible on Malachi. Well, where is that? It says, what should we do with the tithe? And the text simply says, bring all the tithes into the storehouse, that there should be food in my house, Malachi 3:10. So this begs the question, well, where is the storehouse? Just before Moses died, he actually instructed Israel to assemble the Lord's house for praise, worship, and the delivery of the tithes and the offerings. But it says in Deuteronomy 12, verses 10, but when ye go over Jordan and dwell in the land which the Lord your God giveth you to inherit, and when he giveth you rest from all your enemies round about, that ye dwell in safety. Goes on to say, then there shall be a place which the Lord your God shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Neither shall ye bring all that I command you, your burnt offering, and your sacrifices, your tithes, and the heave offering of your hand, and your choice vows which ye vow unto the Lord. So it's basically saying that the storehouse is a place where you get fed. The question that's been asked, well, should I return my tithes to the church or to the conference level, the same way the church has been set up as the conference to be the central storehouse. And that's where the pastors are paid from, and that's where we get fed from. All the offerings are then sent to the church, and we'll talk a little bit about this a little bit later on, to actually fund the daily operations of the church as a unit. 3 times a year talks about in our text or in our slides here, all the males of Israel were to appear before the Lord 3 times a year. That was the Passover, at Pentecost, and at the Feast of Tabernacles. 3 times a year in Deuteronomy 16:16 it says, shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the Feast of Unleavened Bread, in the Feast of Weeks, and in the Feast of Tabernacles. And they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Testimonies to the Church, Volume 6, page 39 says, anciently the Lord instructed his people to assemble 3 times a year for his worship. To these holy convocations the children of Israel came, bringing to the house of God their tithes, their sin offerings, and their offerings of gratitude. Again, 3 different times of year, 3 different types of offering. Dwayne?
So the bottom line is the Israelites gave at least 1/4 of their income to God in the form of tithes, thank offerings, support of the temple, and gifts for the poor. And just having that, once again, that attitude of giving is crucial. They are away from home and work at least 1 month each year, yet the 25% giving and the 1 month away from home were actually the cause of their prosperity and blessing.
So the use of the tithe, Numbers 18, verse 21, it says, "Behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in return for the work which they perform, the work of the tabernacle of meeting." It's clear that God's chosen purpose for the tithe was to support the religious leaders and their families. In harmony with the Bible principle, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has designed the local conference as the storehouse to which the tithe should be returned and from which the gospel ministers would receive their salaries. So that's the tithe we're speaking about there today. Tithe is returned to the local church where the membership is held. Then the local church treasurer right here at Patmos, our local treasurer, then sends the tithe to the conference storehouse from which the religious workers are then paid. Again, the religious workers are then paid as well. So some people always question, well, the tithe, I may not return a tithe because I'm not comfortable with what the use of the tithe is, or I'm not comfortable with the person in charge of divvying up where the tithe goes or what it supports. For those individuals, I encourage you to read Testimonies to the Church, Volume 9, page 249. It says, "Some have been dissatisfied and have said, I will no longer pay my tithe, for I have no confidence in the way things are managed at the heart of the work. But will you rob God because you think the management of the work is not right?" It says, "Make your complaint plainly and openly, in the right spirit, to the proper ones. Send in your petitions for things to be adjusted and put in order. But do not withdraw from the work of God and prove unfaithful because others are not doing right." So no matter what the issue is that you may have with an individual, understand that you don't want to jeopardize the covenant that you have with God because of individuals that you don't trust with the funding of the money. God will take care of those individuals that are not doing with the money as they have planned or that he has purpose. So do not cause that to get in the way of the covenant you have with God. Interest on the tithe. I'll also say this. When you don't return a tithe faithfully and you want to get back in good graces with the Lord, if you will, the Bible also talks about that. It says in Leviticus 27:31, "Whoever would redeem any of their tithe must add a fifth of the value to it." So in essence, that's about 20%. So in essence, I know some of us at some point, we've always said, have had issues with returning a faithful tithe and offering. So then you want to start back up and get in good graces with returning the tithe. And so what's saying here is to be completely back in good faith with tithing. It also talks about returning a fifth of what you did not pay. So it says God wants interest on his tithe. That's how serious he is about this. So, but what about offerings? What about offerings, Dwayne?
So our offerings come from the 90% that remains in our possession after we return our tithe to God. Remember, the difference between tithe and offering is tithe is what has been allocated to God in his work. The offerings is given as a thank you. Offering has been used several times in the Bible. So the sin offering given as a response to experienced grace, and a thank offering to recognize God's protection, blessings of health, prosperity, and sustaining power, and to build and maintain the house of worship.
And also, what about offerings? The failure to bring tithes and offerings to the storehouse was considered by God to simply be robbery of him. Now, obviously, that's where the sin offerings and the temple support offerings would go. Unlike the tithe, offerings can be discretionary. Tithe is obviously 10%, but offerings can be discretionary. So is there a motivation in giving? Well, there should be a motivation in giving. Especially in our church, we like to instruct, or we like to motivate by just not a vision. It follows vision, but not duty. The best giving follows vision, but not duty. It also follows mission and not structure. The best giving also follows people with our personal involvement, not just supporting programs. And then also motivation in giving. The best giving follows passion and not pressure. You don't hear us pressuring individuals to give. We want it to be a passion of yours in order to give. Also, the best giving follows growth and progress, not maintenance. Especially here at our church, Patmos, we like to, especially our pastor, he sees growth and he has a lot of vision. So I encourage those to give because of the vision that's there, not just to maintain where we are and be happy with where we are at this point in time. The best giving also follows information and not promotion. Information and not promotion. Our church has traditionally been a 10 and 5 church, meaning obviously we give a tithe of 10%, but also about an average of a 5% offering. That's on average for our church as a whole. We encourage you, if you haven't given an offering, we encourage you to give an offering, because an offering, the tithe is just the minimum testimony, and then offering is your way of showing thanks to God. Also, the best giving follows conviction and not manipulation. Tithe is a tool God uses to establish his lordship in our lives. The way we deal with money, more specifically tithe, is a reflection of where God is in your life. You check your check registry, your online banking. Look to see what you're giving. Is it more so giving to good causes, or is it more so sustaining your life? Dwayne.
When our hearts are right and we return tithe, number one, we are worshiping God. It is a type of worship, and it enhances our relationship with him. We consciously profess our trust in God to take care and to provide for us. We confess who he is in our lives and recognize his guidance and love, and as a result, we consciously choose to rely on him. Tithe is not a 10% blackmail, that payment to God so that we can do what we want with the remaining 90%. Once again, it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset in how you view your money, and giving God 10%, tithing that 10%. I would hope that he would, that you would use the 90% wisely, and it's not a tip to or thanking God, thanking him for what we have received.
Order and discipline. Now, when we talk about giving, we've talked about last week about setting up a budget. And when you do set up a budget, the first thing you want to make sure you have your gross income of what's coming in, and then you're also tithing off of that. So when people want to get blessed, I've heard stories that, I can't give a tithe and offering right now. Part of the reason is that we don't have a budget. So we talked about a budget last week, and we're going to talk about that a lot more in depth in about 3 more weeks. But God does not bless something where there's no order and no discipline. If there's no order and discipline in what you're doing with your finances, God cannot bless that. We do everything else with order and discipline, and God blesses those things. So I just wanted to make sure we understand that God blesses the areas of your life where there is order. God is not going to bless the areas where there's waste and no control. It is the secret to cash management. So you're not just going to be able to spend money and do anything with your money and expect God to bless that. When you put God first, you have to ask, what is next? When you do your budget and you put your tithe first, you make $1,000 a month, and you put your gross tithe at $100, and then you give a generous offering, let's say 50%, so $50. Your next question then is, what's next? The next question may be, okay, I need to have a place to live, so my rent, my mortgage may be next, and I need something to eat. How much do I allocate towards my food on a weekly or monthly basis? These are questions you're going to have to ask, but it all starts with God. Now you have to organize your life, and without structure, God will not bless your finances. I want to make sure this is clear, because as we go through the next 10 weeks or so, there's certain points in our presentation where people are more passionate. Some people, as we see in a lot of our questions, are more passionate about investments. But if you don't have God leading you out in the budget, in the tithing, in the returning of tithe, then it's hard to be able to put that investment piece in there as well. Some people are passionate about getting out of debt. We start at the beginning. We have to do that budget first and then move down the line. We're going to talk about wills, trust, estates. All that's coming, but we want to move through a process to help each and every one, not just a particular one.
Think of giving as your foundation. Once again, and I'll say this a lot of times throughout the next several weeks about having that proper mindset. So starting with giving, having that foundation, trusting God in every area of your life, including the finances, and having that relationship with him there, then it opens up many other doors of possibilities for you to increase your wealth and to grow with him in that regard.
So ask yourself these questions. Who owns the home I live in? Who owns all the property I manage? Who has given me talent and strength to earn a living? Also, who do I rely on each day? Do I really allow God in every area of your life? We're talking about finances mainly. When you purchase a home, when you purchase a car, when you decide on which college or institution you attend, do you ask God about those questions? Do you bring those questions to God? Our answers to the previous questions will determine whether or not our tithing is truly worship. Now we want to talk about a little bit more of our online and envelope giving. Online and envelope giving. Each and every week, we return a tithe. Some people do it via the online portals, and some people still use the envelope. So we wanted to just discuss that a little bit here this afternoon. Tithe is a test of loyalty. Offerings are a test of our attitude. Offerings are a test of our attitude. So when we go down to our online giving and we type in, one of our portals that we use is Adventist Giving. So it's adventistgiving.org, adventistgiving.org. And as you can see on the screen, for those of you that are not registered yet, even those that are visiting online now at other churches, most churches are registered through Adventist Giving. Patmos is as well. We've put on the screen where you can, how to go about giving online. Now, as you look on this chart online, you'll see the section there up top, which is the tithe. The tithe we talked about, again, being 10%, and it's actually giving you a percentage right there. So for those that may not know, it's already listed on the screen. 10% of tithe. We'll use that same scenario of someone giving making $1,000 for a month. You would then put in that block $100. Your local church, combined budget, your offering, church budget, that's your offering for the church. Specifically what we do here at Patmos, it's where everything that goes towards the maintenance of the church comes out of. So if you want to support the many ministries of the church, you give that in your church budget line. I know there's a lot of different aspects and a lot of different categories online that you can choose, but the way we do things here, we give each and every department a budget to work off of, and that's based on the giving that you give to the local budget. So if there's a passion of yours that you want to give to something in particular, actually the way we do things here at Patmos, we do that through the church budget. So we want to encourage you to give through the church budget and then trust the people that you put in charge of the finances here at church, the finance team, to actually allocate those to the different departments as well. Also on screen, you'll see the Just Say Yes campaign right under the church budget. That also can be viewed as a church budget, a building fund. We've implemented this probably almost about 18 months ago now. That gives the opportunity for the church to build out the building section of our church, where we'll actually come in and worship. And that is where the Just Say Yes campaign is being promoted. So we encourage you to give to that as well. Again, about 18 months or so ago, that was where each and every one of you had the opportunity to make a covenant to commit to a certain amount over the next 3 years. So again, just to recap on what you would see at our Adventist Giving is a section for tithe, a section for combined budget, which is the offering, and then there's also a section for the Just Say Yes campaign. There's a local Sabbath school as well. But again, like we said, if you give to the offering, the church budget, everything else is allocated out of that as well. So that's one screen there. If we scroll to our next slide, this is the lower portion of that same screen. I could only get one portion of the screen on at a time. Below all of that, you'll see where the account that you have set up with your online giving will show. In this example, it has the Pay by Saved account, and then you can choose whether you want a confirmation email to come to yourself or not once you submit your payment. So again, $100, $50 for a budget, and $50 for a Just Say Yes campaign. And then your following screen after this would just show you to confirm your payment. A donation received, and it'll just confirm your payment that it came through your payment account. And also the tithe was, our example here is just $1, and the Just Say Yes was 50 cents, and the combined budget was 50 cents. But this just confirms that your payment had gone through. Also, we want to just discuss those individuals that may be giving through the envelope as well. The envelope, but we can get in tight. I don't know if that's possible now, but if we can get in tight here on the envelope. The envelope here that individuals may be giving on is denoted here by your tithe up the top, at the top, and it shows you the 10% over here as well. The portions in the dark brown are the portions that are given or stay locally here. So you see the offering in the dark brown, and it's suggested that I think it's a 5 to 7%. And then you also have the other dark brown section, which is the building fund. And again, in our church, the building fund could be also mentioned as the Just Say Yes campaign. So if you're giving in those two dark brown sections on this envelope, those monies stay here. The tithe at that top portion goes off to the conference. That's at 10%. And that's helping fund the pastors throughout the conference, in addition to many, many other things as well. You can look at the back of the envelope, that same envelope, which denotes every options you have to give as well. I'll just discuss those. Then you'll tally up everything over here to the right and tally up your totals down here to show exactly what you're giving. And then you return that in to the buckets that the deacons now have as we do drive-in church. But I just wanted to go over that so individuals know where they're giving, how they're giving, and where the monies are being sent when you do give. So that's important as well. Let's acknowledge God's ownership in our covenant relationship with him by being faithful with our tithe. But let's also show our gratitude by systematically giving offerings to God as well. As we look to transition to our questions, I want to remind you all to send in your questions at 407-720-7445, 407-720-7445. The Review and Herald, December 6, 1887, says, "The Lord does not need our offerings, but this is the only way in which it is possible for us to manifest our gratitude and love to God. He has provided no other way." So if you want to show your love and gratitude to God, it's not shown by simply you showing up to church. It's shown, in essence, by you returning a faithful offering to God. That shows your gratitude. Your obedience is shown when you return your tithe to God as well. And again, we'll open it up now for questions as we go into this next segment of questions and answers. Again, you can send that through your Facebook. You can also send that through the 407-720-7445 number as well. One of the questions is, I tithe at 2 different churches. I send tithes to 2 different churches. Is there anything wrong with that? There's never anything wrong with you returning a tithe. I'm assuming I'm not sure if you're giving 5% here, 5% there. I'm not sure if you're giving a 10% tithe at this particular church and another 10% tithe at a different church. I don't really know the details of that. But when you return a tithe, the 10% is what God asks. Where you return it, I can't say ideally it's at the church you're getting fed from, but I do know individuals are just excited about what they may see at a particular church and are willing to donate maybe an offering on top of that to a different church as well. So to answer your question without knowing the details of that question, sure, you can give tithe at different churches. I would encourage you, though, to give a tithe at the church you're being fed from that goes through that conference that you're associated with. If then you want to give something in gratitude to the church that you enjoy, other ministries that they give, then that can be done in an offering as well, don't we?
I've actually got a quick question to expound upon that. Maybe you can answer. You know, if a person is giving tithe at 2 different churches, but it's still the same conference, would it still be the same thing? Is that how that functions?
I think that would be because remember, the tithe does go to the conference. So if you're at a different church, you're actually sending the tithe to that same conference. Now, we always encourage to, I think, answer another question that may spin off of that question. You still want to send the tithe through the church. It's just a process of sending the tithe to the church. Then the church treasurer then sends that tithe directly on to the conference. Sometimes they usually do that the Monday after the Sabbath service as well. So we want to make sure we're doing it through the right portals as well. A Facebook question. It's a struggle. Okay. Where in the Bible does it designate the conference and not the church to be the storehouse? Am I sinning if I help me with that word, doing is that?
I'm assuming it's this, am I sinning if I give the money to the church in the house of God, the storehouse, instead of the conference?
Okay. No, the way the conference is set up, it's really a conference thing. It's more of an Adventist thing that's been set up, that the giving be done through the conference. Churches that may not be associated with a conference, they'll give to that church, and that's where they're being fed from. So the Adventist model has been to give to the conference. And then remember, when you return to the conference, you're not just funding, let's say, our particular pastor, but you're funding pastors throughout that conference. So churches that have, smaller congregations, maybe their pastor wouldn't get the same type of food in their house, to use the meat in my house, because of a smaller congregation. But the way the conference has it set up, it's almost an even distribution of the tithe for the payment or the remuneration of our pastors as well. So I wouldn't say, to answer that second part of your question, we moved on, but to answer the second part, are you wrong in doing that? I would encourage you to do it the way of sending the tithe in. If you want to give on top of that and giving an offering, we encourage you to do that as well. Remember, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with giving. If you want to increase your giving to give more than 10%, more than a 5 or even 10% in offering, there's an opportunity for you to do that as well. Another question. It's a struggle when the storehouse doesn't support essentially ministries at the local level. What are ways that we can hold the storehouse accountable? Feels powerless. Well, again, the storehouse in our Adventist model is to really fund more on a broader scale. The Adventist system has where the offering is what funds the local giving. So ideally, if we give offerings, we're funding our church, and we can help our local ministries. Conference ministries, that's truly what the offering or the tithe is for. So and I see is that a follow-up question? No, that's a separate question. But
I think what this person is getting
Sure.
to is they're saying, listen, I'm paying my tithe, or I'm giving, I should say, returning my tithe, and it's going to the conference level, and I don't like the decisions they're making. I don't like the things that I see happening at the conference level. And they're saying, what are ways we can hold the storehouse accountable because they feel powerless? We do go through a process where there's voting. You can contact the representatives in the conference level. You can express to them some of the ideas and some of the things that you'd like to see. The same way that you would do it with the local government. We all pay taxes, whether you pay your taxes for the home that you live in through your property taxes, or if you're paying sales taxes, or whatever the case may be. You are paying those taxes, and you do have the right to vote local leaders in and out of power, and also hold them accountable by contacting them, speaking to them, and having conversations. So I kind of hope that answers that question here, where it's not a situation where you say, hey, listen, I don't want to give anymore because I don't support who's in power. But you can have conversations with those people and discuss with them, hey, listen, this is where I think things could be, things should be. And how we can grow together as an organization. It's a democratic process. And
I'm reminded also that our tithe also supports the world church. So not just our local pastors, it supports the world church, and that's done via the union and the division and the general conference as well. I thank our finance individual for reminding me of that as well. Another question. Tithes is personal, and where you are led to pay gross or net, and tithe is personal, and where you are led to pay gross or net.
Yeah, tithes are a personal thing. Honestly, at the end of the day, we're just providing where we believe that God would want you to go. But at the end of the day, it is between you and God. At the end of the day, you're gonna speak to God, Lord, how do you want me to proceed and move forward? Pay off the gross or pay off the net. I truly believe that once you really dig deep into this and you develop a strong relationship with God in this particular arena, that he will lead you to give how you're supposed to give. It is a personal thing, but we provide advice for people who are maybe looking for some direction, tithing off of the gross. Obviously, that's the income that you make initially. All those other things are taken out. Your taxes are taken out before you receive your money. So if your taxes are so important that they're taking it out before you receive your money, where does that put God in your life? And so that's something that you have to ask yourself.
And I just want to remind you, when we talk about gross and net, The only time usually most folks have issues with gross and net is usually when it comes to the tithe and the offering. When we go for a home loan, they ask you what's your gross salary. When you put in for a car, they ask you what's your gross salary. I think when you are excited about a new job you have, you go home and you tell your wife or you tell your parents what your gross salary is. You don't bend down and say, well, I got a new job and it's going to be paying about $34,303. You tell them what the gross is, because truly that's what you're actually getting. It's just we make decisions about where we fund our medical, our dental, if we fund those things or not. And also the question is, someone asked me also, do I give, the tithe, the tithe plus then an offering on top of that. It's a lot to do. But that's what we talked about, doing a budget to see where you are. I think the government came in and said, we're going to increase taxes 20%. You'd be mad, you'd be upset, but you'll adjust and you'll do it because it's the government. But God asks us to return a tithe and a good gesture or a thank offering. And most times there's some issue with that. Tithe and offering is always a subject that is very touchy. It's always a very touchy subject. Every time we present it, it's a very touchy subject. But I can tell you many examples of individuals who follow what God has ordained us to do and have been blessed when they've done that. We can question why or who or where it should be given, but if we follow what God says, at the end of the day, I think we'll be blessed where that is concerned. And I hope that answers and gives some insight on some of those questions as well.
Another question here. It says, if all the tithe from the churches worldwide goes to the conference, help me understand why any church should need to go to a bank for any loans or should be in any debt.
The conference, church should be. Well, at the end of the day, I guess to get a loan, remember, loans aren't bad per se. Loans aren't bad per se. It's how long you stay in debt, which is the issue. If all the money goes to a church per se, or to the conference, or the tithe of the church go to the conference, why should any church be in debt? Is that what that full question? We've moved on, so I couldn't see the full question.
I think it says, why should any church be in debt?
Well, again, most churches are in debt because of maybe a building project or something of that nature. Like I said, a loan is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how long we choose to stay in debt. Ideally, we stay in debt no more than about 7 years, and that's a biblical thing as well. Way the churches or the conference divvies up the money may be different from conference to conference, but why we're in debt, I don't think the conference would then go in and pay off all the loans that the local churches determined maybe they wanted to get into on their own as well.
Yeah, imagine, and I don't work at the conference, so I don't know all of the details on how this works, but I believe there's over 140 churches just in the Southeastern Conference. Now imagine if all of them came to the conference asking for money to pay off all of their debts. It would be a situation where the conference would not be able to sustain its mission. It would not be able to pay all of its pastors. So there's a lot of situations in effect where you essentially can't do that. And there's a responsibility also from the local church to go ahead, if they're purchasing a piece of property or something of that nature, that they're going to go ahead and take care of that at the local level. From what I understand, the conference can help them through the process. But once again, I don't work at the conference. I don't know all the inner workings of that. It may be a good idea to maybe speak with someone at the conference level that could answer that question a little bit more in detail.
At the end of the day, most churches, there are about maybe 25 to 30% of the church, any church, not just our church. When I say our church, I mean Patmos. I know we have people tuning in from other churches. It's about 25 to 30% of a congregation that actually supports a church. So at the end of the day, that's why we kind of do this. We try to encourage more individuals to support the church. And when we talk about 25 to 30%, that's the individuals that consistently give and that the church can almost, I hate to use the word, but count on in order to sustain the church. So it's about 25 to 30% at every church. That's any church, whether it's Joe Blow's church on a corner. It's about 25 to 30% on average. So if there's 100 people in your church, only about 20 people support that church. I have a family member who they have a very small church, probably about 50 people in that church, and she knows I do a little stewardship at our church. And she asks, how can we increase the giving at our church? And I asked her, well, how many people are, supporting the church? And she says, well, it's probably about 8 to 10 people. I said, that's unfortunately about normal because of the percentage of people in your congregation. So we're encouraging more people to give, and not just to give, but also to get in tune with what God has said about returning a faithful tithe and offering. If we do that, at the end of the day, there won't be a concern about ministry, about this ministry, and I want to give more to that ministry because the conference or the local leadership is not doing what I would like it to do. If you think about that, if a loan is out there for a particular church, if 40 more percent, not even 100% of the congregation, if we moved from 20% to 60% of that congregation in returning a faithful tithe and offering, then there would be no concern for what monies are done where and what monies are done how. Remember, at the end of the day, our monies when we're in church are looked to further the cause of Christ, whether it's paying the pastors, whether it's feeding individuals that come on a weekly basis to get fed here, or if those individuals are in a third world country where a lot of that tithe money may go to as well to support countries that are less fortunate than the U.S., all that money is going somewhere. If at the end of the day our goal is to have the Lord, look to the Lord returning very soon, that is helped by us returning a faithful tithe and an offering. It may be argued that the reason that individuals that the Lord has, I hate to use the word delay his coming is set, but it is argued that maybe it's not happening as yet because the funds that we have to make that happen sooner are still in the pockets of about 70 to 75% of the individuals that come to church on a regular basis.
Yeah, someone texted in, if everyone was faithful, we might not be in debt, and that's quite possible.
I think that's very possible, actually. Because again, we're talking about 25%.
Right. So think about it, 25%. Imagine if you only lived off of 25% of your 25% of your income, how many things you would not be able to do. And in many cases, the church is not able to achieve some of its objectives and goals because of the fact that there isn't that consistent giving on a large scale. So we encourage people to give. At the end of the day, we'd love for you to give, even if it's something. You get in the pattern or the habit of giving, and as you do that, God will start to bless you. The church will be blessed and be able to do amazing things, and if God's coming will be soon.
Exactly. The other points on that envelope, if you look back at your church envelope, conference envelope, there's a lot of sections there. The education blank, again, those options go away. So if you want to help the education department here at Patmos, again, that's your offering section. If you put something in the blank here that says education, that's going to the conference level, where they help, pay for teachers and schools that are under the conference level as well. So again, anything that you are passionate about, at least at our church, you want to put that under the offering section or the church budget as well.
Or I also want to add one other thing too. The purpose of this course is to really get everyone to really improve their finances. I think one of the challenges, and I can speak from personal experience in the past, where it was difficult to give anything to the church because I made bad decisions financially, or I was not, making the best decisions at home. So we really need to evaluate what we're doing. Imagine your debt situation right now. Imagine if you were to pay off all of that debt. Imagine if you were to make better financial decisions. How much more money can you give? So I don't think the issue is giving. I think the issue is really dealing with the issues that we have in our homes.
Sure.
And not being able to take care of what's home, the money that's going out, making bad purchases, making high interest purchases, doing things like payday loans. All of those things eat into our funds. And as a result, at the end of the day, we say, well, listen, I can't give God anything because I've got all this debt or I've got all these bills to pay. And quite frankly, I can, remove God from the equation because, Lord, I've got all these things. They're going to put me out on the street. So I think at the end of the day, what we really need to focus on is really obviously getting in the habit of giving, developing a giving relationship with God, but also taking care of our finances. And we're going to be spending quite a few weeks on really getting down to the crux of what is the issue in our finances, taking care of those issues. And I believe everyone will be a better giver. They'll be more willing to give. Once these things will be worked out, and we really want to help. We're not just up here to tell you to give your tithe. End of story. We really want to help you focus on improving those issues at the home level, so that way you can give freely.
And again, remember, what we're talking about is something you may not hear from a traditional. We're not calling ourselves financial advisors, but if you go to a financial advisor, he might not mention giving to the church and things along those lines. If you're already doing it, obviously he or she might support it, but he or she may not tell you to do that. So things that we tell you here are always going to be faith-based. Most of you that are tuned in are faith-based Christians, most of you at least. So you can't come to God and ask him for help in your finances if you're not then returning a faithful tithe and offering. It just flies in the face of reality. That doesn't make sense at the end of the day for you to ask God for help with finances if you're not being trustworthy with what he's asked for you to do. Trust me, at the end of the day, at the end of this 12-week session, at the next 9 weeks or so, we're walking you through step by step to get each and every one of you out of a debt situation, to make better investments. Because again, some people are at different levels. I just want to remind you of this. Some people have no debt. We're speaking about a lot of debt, so you're probably looking like, I don't have any debt. Why am I listening to this? We're trying to make a general presentation to everyone. We'll get to your segment. Everything that deals with finances we'll talk about, and we're going to get to that. Making great purchases or major purchases, house loans, car loans, investments, wills, trusts, estate planning, retirement, all that's coming. We have 9 more weeks to get to that. We're building a foundation. If you haven't set up a budget yet, then when we get to investments, you don't know how much you can invest. When we don't have a budget set up, we don't know how much debt we have when we get to the debt payoff portion. So then if you join in on week 11, you're lost. We want you to build a foundation. We want you this week to tell yourself, I'm going to start putting and paying off of the gross so God can bless you off the gross. If you don't pay off the gross and you're getting medical insurance from your job and you get sick and you go to the doctor and part of that is paid because you are funding your medical insurance off of the gross, that's a benefit of what your gross income is giving you. That's why ideally you should be paying off the gross. So again, there's so much benefits in doing that. It's all, some people say, well, it's up to me to do that. Remember, at the end of the day, tithe is off of what you make, not what if you live to pay your taxes come April, you'll then pay back on. You pay it when you receive it, not when you hope to receive it. And I'll return a tithe off of my taxes when I get those returns in April or whenever it is that I get my return. So we want to follow what God has said. And trust me, if you do it, God will bless you. This is not me saying this. This is not Dwayne saying this. Trust me, I don't want it to say this. If I made the Bible, we could all just, come to church, have a great time, sing, dance, do whatever we want, have a barbecue every week. But it's not me doing this. This is the Lord's willing. So let's follow what the Lord said. And trust me on this. I guarantee you, it's on video. I guarantee you, if every one of you follow these steps to get to more financial freedom, you'll be blessed like the many hundreds of individuals have been blessed in the past before.
So we have another question here. So it sounds to me like the local churches are really supported by offerings, and tithing supports ministry, paying pastors, relief efforts, evangelistic campaigns, etc. Is this a safe conclusion?
And more than that, like we talked about, the tithing is worldwide. So yes, it supports the pastors, relief efforts, evangelistic campaigns. Yes, the local churches are supported by your offering. So again, if you feel like, man, we can't do a lot here at the local level, let's encourage each and every one of you, or the ones that you know and the individuals that you know, to be faithful givers in your offering. That way, then the church has no limitations on the things it can do. Look at all the things that we, Patmos, are doing right now. We have a lot of content online right now that individuals can go to. We have, education content, youth content. We have faith and finance content. There's a lot of things. Imagine if, again, just 40% more of our regularly attending members gave to the church. Any loans that we have, any needs that are not met can be met so easily. But because we're not there yet, that's why we have these issues and concerns.
God is so merciful, Imagine if he treated you the way the government did, right? Imagine if you didn't pay your taxes. What happens if you don't pay your taxes? Horrible. What happens if you decide that, hey, you know what? I'm not going to pay my property taxes. They'll take your home. If you decide not to pay taxes on your income, come tax time, the IRS can come and put a lien on everything, right? So, you know, God is so merciful that even when we're not faithful, he's still faithful to us. So, and I would hope that God holds a much higher standing in your life than the government does, than the state does. So, you know, be honest with God. You know, talk to him about the struggles. It is okay to say, Lord, I struggle with giving tithe. I struggle with giving offering. Maybe pray this prayer. Lord, enhance or increase my giving so I can give more to you. These are all things that you can do, but at the end of the day, God is so merciful that he wants you to give it freely, the same way that he wants you to love him freely. You know, salvation is given to you freely, and it's all you have to do is accept it.
Amen. Amen, brother. All right. I think we answered that question already. All right. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm excited about what we have coming up next week and the weeks beyond that. Like I mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to continue to send your questions in online, even during the week. Some questions we just can't get to during our hour-long segment, but we do answer questions through the week. If you have not received a book to go along with this lesson, we encourage you to send your email to the text number on the screen as well, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that book as well. But again, I like to guarantee you, again, most things aren't guaranteed in life, but if you follow the concepts that we lay out here, and again, these are all biblical concepts, you're a faith-based Christian, if you follow these concepts about getting out of debt, about saving, investing, about giving, returning a tithe and an offering, I guarantee you that you will be richly blessed. And then because you're richly blessed, the church will be richly blessed, and obviously, you know, God will be richly blessed in all the things that we look to do to hasten his soon coming at the end of the day.
Yeah, and we want to encourage you to share these videos with friends, family, anyone else that you would think that needs to enhance their faith and finance factor. Please don't keep it to yourself. One of the best things you can do is share it with people. Share these videos so they can get a blessing as well. And also during the week, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to text 407-720-7445. In fact, I encourage you to save the number in your phone, 407-720-7445. If a question pops into your head on Wednesday afternoon, go ahead and text the number. Text it to that number. We'll answer it either directly to you if it's a personal question, or if it's a general question, we'll answer it to the viewing audience.
And there's anonymity here as well. We don't get a name of individuals that send in questions on our text. So, you know, I know when we deal with money, people like anonymity. So feel free to do that and not have a concern that one of us may know who the person is that's asking the question. So we encourage you to continue to study. We encourage you to join us each and every Sabbath afternoon at 3:30 as we look to help each and every one of you build your faith through your finances. Thank you, and God bless.